Welcome back to Branching Out. This episode, we finally get to talk to Caleb. He's a great footballer, as you know. He's currently leading FC Tulsa as their general manager. Of course, I'm talking about Caleb Sewell. He's the former goalkeeper for the New York Red Bulls, for FC Toronto, and many other clubs across his long professional goalkeeping career. We talk a lot about his recent success with this Tulsa team, things he's thinking about doing next year, including winning the USL Cup and Championship, and then also just how all of this experience from playing to leading teams relates to opportunities in business, in leadership, and management, honestly, in parenting and many other realms. Caleb is a really great guy to talk to. Really happy he stopped by. If you are liking the Branching Out series, please do us a favor. Go ahead and like the videos, subscribe to Branching Out or to the Bonsai channel on YouTube, and check us out on your favorite podcast tool, whether that's Spotify, RSS, or many other platforms. We hope you had a wonderful holiday and looking forward to our next conversation. Welcome to Branching Out by Bonsai, the podcast where marketing gets measured, myths get busted, and acronyms get explained. No filler, just the good stuff. Let's get into it.
Awesome.
Well, thank
good.
you for coming out to our office.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Hope you're enjoying our -5-degree day here in Chicago. But yeah, I know you're not unfamiliar with the weather we have here,
That's
given
right.
the fact that you were up in Toronto for many years. Is that right?
I was there going on 3 years as a player, and then later on as a player coach, and then that's where retirement happened as well. So but they equally had their snow and had the big city feel. So it's cool to see this here today.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, thanks. And I think that's a great jumping off point.
Yeah.
I know we'll talk a lot about your team, FC Tulsa,
Yeah.
and where you see that going in a few minutes. But before you ran teams, you were a player yourself. Could you tell me a little bit about your exciting career?
Yeah, I think, so half Australian, so that's where you get the weird accent. So grew up in Australia. My dad's American, mom's Australian. Grew up there, played a lot of cricket growing up, and then pivoted to having to choose between soccer and cricket. So went the soccer route, and then that took me to England, took me to Italy, took me to many different places, Portugal, where I met my wife. So I went there speaking no English, no Portuguese rather, and then now being somewhat fluent in Portuguese, and then just continued on from there. Played in the MLS for a number of years, played in Europe, as I mentioned, for a number of years, and then decided to retire and take this crazy job. But yeah, it's been a ride.
So goalkeeper turned executive. Was there any part of that playing experience that got you thinking, hey, maybe I should be running these teams?
You know what? It's funny because I think when you work your way up the ladder as a player, you go through many different experiences, right? You'll get really well-run clubs. You'll get clubs that are budget conscious. You'll get clubs that they just want a promotion. And so they're trying to figure out how do we compete but stay alive and stay afloat. So as time went on, I thought I wanted to go into the coaching route. And really that was natural progression in terms of just want to help people, and you can't play anymore, but you can be close to it. You can be competitive. And I know you played sport growing up. So once you're kind of away from actually playing it, what's the next best thing? I think that's coaching perhaps. But then really we owned businesses away from the field. And so then as time went on, it really got me thinking about, is it coaching that really interests me, or is it really being the connector of that coaching piece of those business decisions and sitting in between the technical and that kind of business side? And I think that's where my skill sets lie. It's one that I enjoy to wrestle with, and building things, right? You want to construct it from the ground up and have a vision. So yeah, that resonated with me, and that's where I find myself right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had a little bit of a, not nearly as long and successful career as you had, but I do remember the period of life moving from playing and then, figuring out what you do after playing. Because when you play, that's your life, right?
Yeah.
It's so immersive. And I was lucky enough to dabble a little bit in coaching, and I'm excited one day to maybe you get back into it. But I think, and I was maybe 23 or 24 when I was doing this, but you learn pretty quickly, if you didn't already know, coaching's very different than playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
In many respects, it's, it calls on like all different things. And then you really have to have like a separate, I would almost say a separate calling or passion for it.
100%.
Just loving the sport is important, but it's not the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it's probably the same running a team.
It's I think when you're a player, you wake up, you go to training, you go home. It's very individualistic. I do my job, and that's it. And then on this side, when you come through, you realize it's so different. There is such a different decision making comes not just from me as the individual, as a player. That's my job. You now start thinking about the whole setup, the coaches, the staff, and all the ownership and your budgets and all these things that come into it. So I think it's completely different from a playing perspective. I have a newfound respect for the coaches and general managers and people that I've played for before, because you never really understood. Now you get that on the flip side. But yeah, 100%. Like with any genre of work, I think if you don't have a passion for it, ultimately you're not going to be as successful as what you may want to be. Just because I think there's times where I'm at work and it's 8 o'clock and my wife's calling like, are you not planning on coming home today? But genuinely enjoying what I'm doing, right? And I think that's that comes to the passion, but also the struggle of trying to build something and create something that's really interesting for me.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit more about FC Tulsa.
Yeah.
Now that you bring them up, I know there's been a ton of exciting achievements this year.
Right.
Those successes probably didn't happen overnight. So yeah, tell me about your journey leading FC this year and all that led up to it.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster in the sense of I took the job probably this time last year in December. And then I think the biggest thing that for me was understanding the club hadn't been successful for the previous few years. They hadn't been in the playoffs at all. They hadn't won anything. And so for me, it was kind of, I think a lot of people saying, why do you think you can win there? But that was sort of the beauty, is that I met with the ownership group. They were very invested. They wanted to win. And I think if you have that backing, you've got a chance. But then for me, just coming in and having a clean slate. And that was my biggest sort of, I don't want to say non-negotiable, but having the ability to come in and really affect change has to be, we've got to set standards. We've got to build this thing from the ground up and have a really solid foundation. And equally getting ownership and those to understand we're going to have ebbs and flows, but we need to maintain course. And we did that this year. We started with a new coach, a new assistant coach, new sports performance director. We had a new athletic trainer, more than 50% roster turnover coming into it. We got a new groundsman. I mean, you name it, we did it. So from that stand front, some would say that's somewhat risky because there's no continuity. My viewpoint was it hasn't worked for the previous 3-4 years. So it's kind of a little bit of the definition of insanity, just keep doing the same thing. So we went for it, and we're backed fully, and we stayed course. We went on to win the club's first trophy, which is the Western Conference. So that was really cool. We got to see, we lost in the final in shootouts, which is disappointing. But I think the end of the year, there was a few times where you get a kind of a little bit emotional up in the box watching everything that went around. I remember sort of the semifinal and final when the anthem was playing. If you go back and you just look at all the work you've done and how the crowds came, we were sold out. There was no more tickets left. The whole city got into it. We seen more jerseys than you could poke a stick at, and the city really backed us. So I think that was just kind of a moment where you reflect and say, regardless if we win, of course, the competitor you want to win, we've made a difference, and the decisions we've made throughout the year, this is the consequence of that. And lucky for us, it was on the right side of good.
Well, congratulations. That's meteoric in terms of success and rise. I have two things I want to get back to. Before I forget, I need to ask you. So I'm only a casual football fan.
Sure, yeah.
But I know you're a goalkeeper. What's your take on shootouts?
Yeah. Well, this year I hate them because we lost. But no, look, I think that was something that I enjoyed. You can do homework on it. So trying to put that into another American sport. I don't think we fully have anything like that. But maybe baseball. I'm sure there's some data points for, in certain moments, what kind of pitches they're used to going to, or high pressure moments, what's his go-to ball. But for us, we look for patterns.
Yeah.
You'll see players write that on their water bottles and things like that. I used to look for patterns,
Yeah.
and then I used to figure out, you're a big game player, he might want to change it up. I don't think he's a young guy. He's a rookie. He's not changing it up. He's just going with what's comfortable. So, yeah, that was always something that I enjoyed. Come out probably more on the good side than bad in the shootout, which was lucky for me. And I think some people just have a knack. So you can't really coach it. Just you kind of smell which way, and you end up going that way. And that worked out for the most part for me. But for the club this year, we lost 2 penalty shootouts throughout the year, so that was not fun. But yeah, so you just got to be lucky.
Knowing your track record with shootouts, it's no surprise you have a strong track record with taking on challenging situations and coming out on top. I kind of believe it's just a crazy amount of pressure, though, given that you play all of that time and now it's basically you and one guy.
And that's it. I think the fans enjoy it. I think the players and staff, when you say we lose that way, it's like everyone says it's a terrible way to lose.
Yeah.
And I agree in the sense of, I'd rather just lose straight up. You beat me, and I can accept that. But on the day, we didn't concede a goal the whole playoffs.
Yeah.
And then yet we lost the final. But that's life. Someone had to do it. Unfortunately, it was our turn this year.
It isn't always fair, but
right.
it is
That's
what
life.
it is.
That's right.
Two of the other thoughts that
Sure.
as you kind of described that process of taking FC Tulsa to kind of the next stage, the championship stage, so to speak, that resonates with me and what we're working on and hoping to solve at Bonsai.
Sure.
You mentioned that the ownership wanting to win, and that being really critical as you made a bunch of changes.
Yep.
You saw those through. Obviously, you've seen a lot of the rewards of that. I think before we got into this aggressively and into this field at Bonsai, I think even, I had worked in digital for, I don't know, it's probably going on 20 years now. And I think it took more for granted the idea that people, like, if you're running a company, you must want to achieve your goals, to succeed, to win, whatever your field happens to be.
Right.
I wouldn't say people don't like success, but I would say I have a bigger appreciation for the difference between, a team, a company that is looking to basically just keep the lights on, to stay afloat.
Right.
They're not necessarily trying to lose, but they don't really necessarily have a vision or a goal of like what excellence and growth looks like. Versus that mentality of saying like, hey, you mentioned the continuity change, and is that a concern in making lots of changes? Well, your point is so correct. We don't need to keep not winning championships here. So let's look at what we need to change. Right. The businesses that work with us and, a lot of, I would say for the most part, if you are working with our platform and our team, you're likely doing something very differently than you used to do it.
Right.
Yeah. That paired with someone who's making change with a goal in mind of overachieving or succeeding, it works really well.
Right.
What we're doing and what we're trying to take on is probably not a great fit though for people who achievement at that higher level isn't really something that they're really passionate about doing, and they're not willing to make those hard decisions.
Correct.
I got to imagine the things that you wanted to do and then saw success with. As you mentioned, you had the backing of ownership of the organization that empowers you to see that through. But it wasn't like you came in, made changes, and you saw an undefeated season from the very beginning, right? There had to have been periods where before you get to the championship, Caleb, how do I know this is working?
Right.
Once, post buy-in from those stakeholders, in those conversations, how did you approach, or what did you look for as measures that you were on the right track?
Sure. I think you hit it. The word you used there a lot was change. And I think what you'll find in organizations, companies, can be sport, can be other companies. I think you'll find very few people who are comfortable with change. Everything is a resistance to change. And that's why they've got a bazillion different change models that you can use in different sectors. So change is difficult. And I say that change without a purpose or a why is even more difficult for your employees to get involved with, or to build a little coalition that we're going to go and attack this. And so I think first understanding what the change is, why we're doing, and communicating that to your group. And in my case, illustrating that to an ownership group in the beginning, and then I went back down into a technical staff and said, "This is why we're doing something. Here's what we need to be doing." Equally giving the staff a voice to be part of that process, and I think that's equally within the change that whatever model you're going to use. That's a significant moment, is allowing the employees to have a voice as well. So there's buy-in, and you create that wanting to win those challenges and overcome them, or achieve the goals that the company set forward. So that for me was really key, as an immediate measuring stick. Who's going to get on board? Who wants to be successful? And who's happy just doing what you've always done? And that was the line where, if you're just happy doing what you've always done, the results have spoken for itself at that moment. So I don't want to be associated with average. I want to be associated with excellence and setting standards. But I need a team that wants to do that with me, and no person does that alone. I think it's really critical in a moment of change to understand nobody can do it by themselves. So we went about forming that, and then we moved into what that's going to look like from a front office standpoint. Who do we want to be? What's the vision? Where do we want to be in 3-4 years time? I think a lot of people, when they're going through change, I just bring someone else in and they'll fix it and we'll figure it out. You can't figure that out. You need to know where you're going, and that's where strong leadership comes in. Moments that things aren't going well, how do we maintain the course? But then, and I use in Memphis, when I was at a previous club, we lost 5 games in a row to start the season. I remember the coach coming in going, "You're probably going to have to move me on at a certain moment." It hasn't crossed my mind. He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Have you looked at the data?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, all the data points that we care about," and I think data is very informative and very dangerous if you don't understand the insights that move the needle. So that's my viewpoint, of course. But the data points that we cared about, we were overwhelmingly winning those battles from a data viewpoint on the field. So thinking long term, that's who we want to be. That's what we set out to do. We are achieving that. The results aren't speaking to that today. But over time, with consistency and continuing down this track, the data says we're going to be successful. And so instead of just changing because, well, that didn't work, and then this doesn't work, and then you just flip-flop and you don't have an identity, you don't stand for anything, you can't build on that foundation, that is a clear indicator for me that, hey, we were going in the right way. We just need to stay the course. This year, we use XG and XGA, and basically it's the differentiator. So we were the ability to score more goals and concede less goals. Very basic.
Yeah.
Not overcomplicating things. Let's just keep it simple. We did that, and we won those battles on a weekly basis more often than not. And that was a metric that we thought was take us somewhere towards a championship, and evidently that was correct. But you have to build to that over time. Yeah.
It could have been maybe an example from, was it Memphis?
Yeah,
You said?
yeah.
Maybe from a Memphis example, or I guess I'd be really curious about this season at Tulsa.
Yeah.
Were there any periods that stand out to you as inflection points, either with leadership group or with folks on the team or on the ground, that where you saw people really started to get what you're preaching?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we tried to do, and it was no real data point per se, is one of the non-negotiables is our DNA and how we're going to work. So that can be in a front office, and that could be for the team. And in the front office, it was, don't be that guy going down the stairs at 4:45 waiting in the car park. Like, if you got work to do, let's do it. Let's be awesome. And let's set a standard. If you've done your work and you can get out of here earlier, go and do that. But we want you to understand that I put on a PowerPoint early in the year, ask yourself, is this my best work? If the answer is no, then you're not doing yourself any good, and you're definitely not going to be part of a winning team that way. So we changed that part in the front office. And then downstairs, we said to the guys, what our culture is going to be is work rate. We got to start with work rate, and we got to start with a little bit of honesty and taking on, not want to say criticism, but direct feedback. Our group was phenomenal. And so when it came to the work rate and it came to, okay, they're buying in, once we seen the levels of training, the come and beat down your door for feedback, they want the feedback, You listen to them say, hey, I can't wait for the 60th minute in the game because we're going to crush them. That's byproduct of how we're training. Those culture pieces are equally as important as our data points that we see going down the line. Okay, we're going in the right direction. When we hear that, we knew we had buy-in from the company in this case, that they're all behind us in where we're going. And I think that snowballed week on week. And in the end, I don't think the boys cared about any data points as much as we did. They just felt as though, hey, we're all in the same boat. We're going the right direction. And change at that point was not really a conversation. It was more, this is the way forward. Yeah.
The thing I take the most from playing sports into trying to do anything of value with our work has always been that idea of working towards something that's really hard.
Right.
And when you're working on something really hard, like it's defined by the fact that you just can't, you're not going to succeed all the time.
Right.
Not everything is going great.
Yep.
If everything you did was just always great,
everybody would do it.
It's easy.
Correct.
So we can't have and want to do really important, amazing, hard things and then always succeed all the time.
Right.
And sports, in my case, it was baseball, but like I think in a lot of high level athletics, people who really succeed start to turn that corner of being okay with, I'm on this journey. The feedbacks, yes, it feels on the surface level might feel like I'm always failing.
Sure.
But I'm getting better all the time.
Right.
And that's such a powerful mentality. And it turns that entire process into an advantage down the road, right? And I think, it's one of the hardest things we do in, again, getting away from the technical work we do with marketing measurement and all the, our platform does this and prediction that, math this. But at the end of the day, what we're doing very differently a lot of times with these organizations is through data and through a tool, we're helping expose that there's quite a bit of not great going on.
Right.
And how fast can you get okay with that?
Yeah, exactly.
And how fast can that be like not? This does not mean we're all fired.
Sure.
This isn't cause for alarm. This is an opportunity.
Yes.
This is what we're doing in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing when you can get that. You mentioned the culture being as critical as the metrics, and I 1,000,000% agree. Because when we see the culture come along, it's wild. It's suddenly all these things get better, and then people find it fun and appealing to actually go after being best as opposed to like where they were before. But this I've seen it work, I've seen it not work. But it's certainly something that I think we should, I hope we do at Bonsai, but I think what you've done is so impressive, and I think everyone should do.
No, I think that's the biggest thing is when you're talking there about having the change within the organizations that you go. I think naturally when you're spelling that out for people and saying, this is where we feel like the gaps are. And we use the word opportunity often at work. I think if you say this is where we failed, this is where we're weak or whatever, people get defensive. We say there's an opportunity for further success here in this area. And how are we going to do that together? And I think when you illustrate that and people drop their guard and aren't resistant to change, you can do that. And then they work towards whatever goals you're setting them. And I think that goes across all businesses. I love these types of conversations where it's not just sport. Obviously, for me, it's linked to sport. But when I listen, I think most of the places fail because they don't have an identity. Their culture's not very strong or not really enforced, both good and bad. And therefore, all these technical metrics that we're setting and we're trying to achieve, I call them fluff because you really don't have the group behind that to go and achieve those goals. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. Yeah.
You mentioned also the process and the amount of time it takes to see those end results.
Yes.
Are there any watchouts, or have you seen any mistakes that teams that you compete with make in terms of like going that same process that we should all avoid?
Yeah. There's a lot. I think for us, it's about money. People feel that money can if I just throw money at the same thing that I'm doing, it's got to get better, right? So if I just keep going down the same track and I keep putting money, eventually I'm going to buy my way to something successful. And whereas I go back and say, money, just because you're spending it, is it money well spent? And if you don't have a system or you don't have a structure and you don't have a way of working or the DNA, and it ultimately comes back to the culture piece again, if you don't have that, you're just sticking Band-Aids on the cracks that you've got instead of digging deeper and saying like, who are we? Who are we going to be? What is it going to take to get there? And then remaining consistent. I think a lot of people think for a season ahead, 12 months ahead, and then we'll get to that point and we'll decide what comes next. I think ultimately you need to be looking 3-4 years down the line as what does that look like? What are the trends? What's likely to change during that period? Are we factoring that in? And then working to achieve those results throughout. But you've got to be consistent, and you've got to have people working towards that, and not just more of the same. If I just keep doing more of the same, eventually I'm going to get lucky. I mean, we can all go to the casino. We play long enough, we're probably going to win, but that doesn't mean we haven't lost $1 million beforehand, right? So I think you've got to be have a little bit more foresight than just the here and the now, and making sure in your organization that everybody is on the same page. Otherwise, if people just want immediate success today, they don't understand what you're building, then you start losing traction, as I call it, and you just spin your wheels, and you're kind of in this cycle of people doing their own things. We're not winning, we're not making success, and we're just spending a ton more money. Ultimately, that leads to people out the door, right?
Now that you've taken FC Tulsa to a championship caliber place, are the long-term goals and short-term goals changing at all, or how are you messaging those to your team in 2026?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I reached out to a friend that played in the Premier League about a week ago, and I wanted to pick his brain on when you won at the highest level and you come back next year and you're having that all-team meeting, what was different? What'd they say? You have your DNA, you have your way of working, and he asked me like, kind of, what do you think? And for me, it was, you've got to have a new way of adding to your strengths. But I want to say that your DNA and your culture, if you get that right, that's kind of like your foundation. And as we build moving forward, we're obviously going to go to ownership. They're going to look and think, okay, how can we help them make better decisions? How can we add more strings to their bows, whether that be through data platforms to make more informed decisions, whether that can be through player budget or infrastructure or those things to move it forward. But I think that's always a challenge of once you've had success, how do you build on that? But I'm a big proponent of being consistent and staying true to who we want to be. And for us, that's building over that 3 to 4 years to be a perennial contender, and having not the biggest budget, ideally not the lowest budget, and just making sound decisions while understanding our identity. And I think that makes the clarity piece come through a lot easier. And I think that's how we'll ultimately continue to have success, is just to be consistent in what we're building and don't deviate. Don't think because others are spending a ton more money, we need to go and get this big player. That's not who we are today. And I think that's even this offseason. Guys are seeing other teams sign a lot of players. We're very patient right now.
Yeah.
And it's just different ways of working. But for us, it's just consistency. We know who we are. We'll wait for the right moment, and we'll get better at what we're good at. And we'll try to make sure that our weaknesses, we can bring them up a level. Yeah,
I love that answer. I think I think it resonates a little bit with personal experience, but also from what you hear from so many other folks from not just football, but other sports and leaders and walks of life. That foundation you mentioned. Ultimately, what got you here, that process that got you here, that's going to be the thing that takes you to hold up the trophy the next time, or hang the banner, so to speak, for many years to come. So, this has been super fun.
No,
Caleb.
this is.
I do know we need to wrap, but I have one question I feel like I got to ask.
Sure.
The other area where sports and what we do, I feel intersect almost perfectly is, you're on your example of the sort of winning success side of it, but your league and of course many others, they're hyper competitive.
Right.
That's what makes them fun.
Sure.
That's what makes them. It's exciting to win. But not everyone can win the championship, and there's there's consequences for leaders that happen that hit you really fast when your teams don't win. Coaches. I know you mentioned the one coach coming to you, right? But he's not the only one, right? All the time, coaches are sacked, or organizations change.
100%.
Entire staffs, and this is in football, but it's in every sport. And in business, the chief marketing officer. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's the shortest average tenure of any C-level across broader companies, right? And It varies, but I've heard
Sure.
estimates as little as 18 months
Right.
all the way to,
Right.
under 3
Right.
years.
Right.
So I think, I guess what that speaks to in my mind is how hard the job is,
Yep.
how competitive ultimately winning
Sure.
is,
Yeah.
even though I know not everyone is
Mhm.
doing it well,
Yep.
but at least the top, right?
Mhm.
It is
Mhm.
it is as hard a job with
Sure.
often as few of the resources as
Yep.
really any C-level job
Right.
exists.
Sure.
So in that respect, as someone who's given some great examples today from FC Tulsa, but I know
Yep.
you have others.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for this sort of group, right?
Yeah.
The CMOs writ large.
Yeah.
They're in a very competitive game.
Sure.
You've come out of a very competitive game.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you tell them to say, to think about, to take into 2026?
Yeah, it's wow. That's could be a long-winded answer, but
Please.
I would say the biggest thing for me is those executive have to understand you need to build a really driven team.
Yeah.
And that will ultimately help you outlast those 18 months, 2 years, or so on. It's the same in our industry. Coaches are at 18 months to 2 years before they're sacked. My roles, they're around about 2 to 3 years before you're sacked. And if you go back to competitive, we get judged on results on a weekly basis on the field. These guys are getting judged on a weekly basis, whether it be clients' revenues and whatever it may be. But the number one thing is communication as well, and making sure that when you have your team, you're clearly articulating what it is that you're trying to achieve and who are the stakeholders that need to come to the table so that you can make sure that the first time you're failing isn't the first time they're hearing about that, right? And I think a lot of people, even in executive roles, they don't want to stick their hand up and ask for help, or you've not got the idea. So that could be a sign of weakness. I gotta come up with something. I believe the complete opposite. Get your team together, get around the table. You guys together will come up with a plan that is way more compelling than just any individual. And then when it comes to your success and getting results for a customer or for an organization, they need to be communicated to effectively and on a regular basis as to where are we at in this process? Where are we going? Would you like a voice in this conversation? Otherwise, it gets back to, well, I think we should just be doing this. And I don't know the struggles. And I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you need. So out with that guy, in with a new guy.
You've brought up a few times encouraging the people to bring their voice to that conversation.
Right.
And bringing it early and not like being a surprise.
Sure.
I love that. Do you feel like that builds trust?
100%. And trust is kind of, for me in an organization, it's almost like the culture word. We talk about it. We don't truly know what that means at times. It's kind of like, but for me, the trust is I can trust that person to come forward, good and bad. I can trust that the information that I'm getting is proven because they can show me where that information is coming from. But ultimately, when you've got a leader that is open to different ways of working, and then you guys are achieving success, I can believe that my staff brought me that idea. And we're going to run with that because I feel like that's a better idea than I've got. And now I trust them to go and perform that, right?
And building that driven team, is there, if you could only pick one thing, is there like one trait you'd look for to tell in your mind, like, hey, I think this person's driven?
I think it's your work rate, and I think that's a non-negotiable. And I think that can be as an athlete, that can be in a boardroom, that can be whatever. I think you've built a business, and you'll know that you've been doing hours of work where people don't see that. You're in a room, your kids are asleep, it's after dinner, and you're working away, and it's like, hey, this is what it takes to be successful. I think there's so many people that they want to paper over work rate, and it's like a new platform or new this or new that. There's no substitute for me in an organization for people that are going to turn up early and leave late and get the work done. Those employees or those people, they're worth $1 bazillion because ultimately, they're going to continue to drive what you're doing as opposed to they're out the door at, 4:45 and they can't wait to get home, right?
It's the, a lot of times, even in technology, right? The thing that ends up changing your business, changing the world, that might have been a product that took 10 minutes to code and launch, right? And that can be very true.
Right.
But what people don't know, who have never done it, is that, well, that 10 minutes only happened because of the 5 years of failure or the 10 years of work together or the, the corpus.
100%.
The corpus of that work rate, as you call it, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes, like the magic moments, they they're short and fleeting and powerful.
Yeah.
But you don't get to like just do those moments. You
No,
have
no,
to do the
yeah,
other things too.
That's I say the you get paid for the 95% of the job, well, the 5% of the job that you don't like, depending on how you do it. I call it can we swear?
Yeah.
I tell our staff, we truly get paid for the shit work. Like, so the stuff that you don't like doing is ultimately where your nous is going to come through. The cute stuff, the proud moments, all that is a byproduct of the shitty work that people don't see that you're doing. And I think in any organization that is key. And I don't think there's any substitute for that, whether it be more investment, more whatever. If you've just got poor work rate, I think you're going to fail as an organization. I did have one question for Matt, though. I don't know if you want to film this.
Well, we're still recording.
So you were talking about when you go out to people and you're showing them this is kind of where your gap is. Like, this is where you're not performing. How do you get them on board? I guess is my question, because obviously you could be speaking to an owner where he takes that personal. What do you mean? Like, I'm amazing.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear that. I'm just curious as to how do you level that to those people that perhaps would take that as a personal shot, and how do you get them on board?
Yeah, great question. I'll give you two answers.
Yes.
So it's one interesting thing in our world is that I wouldn't say it's the rule, but there are times when, say, the owner or the CEO or whomever is involved in that sort of early conversation, right? And what might be surprising is actually those are the easiest ones.
Okay.
So you're onboarding our platform, you're bringing this analysis to you. It ultimately is showing there are some things that are really powerful and working, but it often shows lots of things that need improvement. In our world, if it's the CEO, they definitely don't know what to do, but we're only talking. Because in their mind, they're like, hey, we've hit an inflection point. We have to make a change.
Right.
I don't know where it hurts, but I feel like something hurts. Someone make it better.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So in many respects, you're almost that doctor giving a diagnosis.
Right.
Finally giving insight into like what we're going to go fix. And so with that cohort, there's almost like this excitement over the bad news.
Yep.
Much more common, and I say that to say then with the folks that have a far harder time hearing that news in the beginning are the marketing team.
Got it. Okay.
So it's that role of the person who, and oftentimes it's more than one person, right?
Sure.
Organization or their agencies and their teams or sometimes an entire suite of partners, right? Where they're now sometimes the strategy hasn't been clarified enough, and sometimes there's an issue with respect to like how they go about it, but a lot of times it's not that they don't have a good strategy, and that it's not that the CMO is an idiot, or that the teams aren't full of smart people. And if they essentially had if their plan had been realized in practice, frankly, it would be working really well.
100%. Yep.
It is unfortunately not through one person's fault, but through like essentially you have XG and XGA, right? Expected goals, expected goals against. Is that right? Okay. So these data points, I'm sure these are valuable. You're probably always iterating on them, right? Making better. In marketing, we have a lot of data that isn't even close to as good as that.
Right.
And it dresses up in many costumes.
Right.
And many times that data has been on a scoreboard somewhere that people have genuinely thought was right, and they are getting an insight to the first time that it has one or more fundamental issues.
Right. Okay.
So that switch is very jarring, because what you're basically then telling people all at once is like, hey, the world you thought you were living in is a lie.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
And so there's the whole like, don't shoot the messenger kind of phrase you'll hear in other scenarios. Yeah. I joke about it as the trough of disillusionment.
Sure. Yeah.
So like you typically bring bonsai in, and this happens almost everywhere. If you come to bring bonsai's not just team but the platform in, you're like, okay, great, we need a change, we need improvement, we want to win. You're so excited. The CEO gets that first view. Everyone's like, oh, this is great. We're finding where it's working, all this issue.
Right.
But then you're hitting that, no matter how much you say you want it, you hit that initial period of like, oh my God.
Okay.
There's a lot of bad news here. And, peers of bonsai both service providers and technologies that compete with Bonsai, you'd argue that for the most part, these technologies only exist as a way to advocate for the status quo and to tell a story. It doesn't matter how we're really doing.
Right.
These tools are sophisticated products that tell a fancy sounding story, but doesn't always write.
Right. Okay.
And so a lot of times they genuinely think that part of the deal in measurement is that it's going to tell some rich, rosy story.
Right.
And then they can work with our product, and it's like, in certain cases, there's no rosy story in the beginning.
Yeah.
This is where it gets ugly.
Right.
So then there's this like, hey, what the heck, Matt?
Right.
Or Bonsai team or whatever.
Sure.
And what they don't say this out loud, but what I imagine is going through their mind is like, man, this is the worst freaking. I've never seen advocacy like nothing. like we hired you to tell a better story than this. This is not what we paid for.
Right.
And then it's like, can you get through that initial phase? Can you be like, well, remember why we started this?
Right.
We all agreed we want to compete and win.
100%.
We all agreed.
Yep.
And so you kind of have this like, okay, that was the hard news.
Yep.
If you can get through it together. And if we trust each other, right, and that's the big thing. It's like, can we? It's not about being right or showing off or Can we convince through our products and our team? Can we convince that we're actually, even though we might bring bad news, we couldn't be more on your side of the aisle.
Yeah, 100%.
This is not about you're wrong. This is can we work together and pull this back where it needs to be? Because we believe in you, and I think you now have a roadmap to do it.
Sure.
When that happens. And I say it's not 100%, but when that happens, it's wild to watch.
What happens?
It's amazing to watch. It can happen within weeks and months. Honestly, I think sometimes we've seen cases that I almost hesitate to share because I'm like, my God, like if people think it always will happen this fast, I don't want them to freak out if it takes a little bit longer.
Right.
Yeah, but every case is different. But I would say like that is the thing is can you get through that couple, I always joke, it's like, month 3 is going to be your hardest month because you're going to hate our team. But if you get to month 4
then
without killing us, I think you're going to really be excited.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot personally from this, Caleb. I appreciate you coming on our podcast, and I hope folks we reach a very niche group. Marketers, technologists, a little bit of overlap in between, but I hope they found this insightful and interesting.
Yeah.
I guess where can we find you guys next year? Tell us about the team, the schedule, who you playing, and where can we see you win?
That's good. We kick off in March. We have our first match away in Sacramento. So the games are broadcast on ESPN or CBS. We can be seen there. Preseason starts January 15th, so it's a short turnaround for us. But we're back at it, and hopefully we can go one goal further than we did this year and win a championship, and that's the goal. And so we're back at it, trying again.
Well, cheers. Let's see a title in 2026.
That's the idea. Cool.
Right, Kyle,
thanks.
so
I appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
Cheers.
No.